On the morning of my husband's funeral, my daughter-in-law Vanessa handed me a manila envelope and said, "This is the care facility paperwork. You'll be moving in by Friday. I'm Eleanor Whitmore. I'm 72 years old." I looked at that envelope, looked at her perfectly manicured nails, her black Prada dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and I said one word: okay. Then I decided to do something I should have done 30 years ago. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this has traveled. And please, stay with me until the end. My name is Eleanor Marie Whitmore, and until 3 weeks ago, I was married to Charles Edward Whitmore for 47 years. He died on October 8th, 2024, at 3:47 in the morning, holding my hand in our bedroom at 1247 Sycamore Lane, the house we'd lived in since 1989. I know people looked at me and saw exactly what Vanessa saw: a quiet woman who'd spent her life taking care of everyone else. The kind of woman who bakes cookies for school fundraisers and never misses a grandchild's birthday. The kind who wore sensible cardigans and orthopedic shoes and said "yes, dear" more times than she could count. And that was true. All of it. What they didn't know, what nobody knew except Charles and our attorney, Mr. Gerald Hampton of Hampton and Associates on 5th Street, was that I hadn't always been Eleanor Whitmore, the homemaker. Before I married Charles, I was Eleanor Castellano, and my father, Vincent Castellano, owned Castellano Commercial Properties, which at the time of his death in 2001 controlled 43 commercial buildings across 3 states, with a total valuation of approximately $47.3 million. When my father died, he left everything to me, his only child. Charles and I made a decision that day. We would keep it quiet. We would live off his professor's salary at Bridgemont University, $89,000 a year, respectable but modest. We would invest my inheritance carefully, conservatively, and we would build something for our future. We would see who in our family loved us for us. It took 23 years, but we got our answer. November 2nd, 2024, the funeral was held at Riverside Memorial Chapel on a gray Tuesday morning. 147 people signed the guest book. I counted them later, sitting alone in our kitchen at 2 a.m. because I couldn't sleep and I needed something concrete to focus on. My son, Gregory James Whitmore, 39 years old, stood at the front receiving condolences like he was running for office. He'd flown in from Denver the day Charles died, bringing Vanessa, his wife of 4 years, and their 2 children, Sophia, 7, and Michael, 5. I watched him hug people he hadn't spoken to in years. Watched Vanessa in her designer grief, dabbing at dry eyes with a lace handkerchief that probably cost $200. The service was beautiful. Charles would have hated the fuss, but Gregory had insisted on doing it properly. That meant 17 floral arrangements at $300 each, a catered reception for 80 people at the Bridgemont Country Club, and an obituary in the New York Times that cost $1,847. I didn't argue. I was in shock, I think. The kind of shock that makes you feel like you're watching your own life from somewhere far away. After the burial, after they'd lowered Charles into the ground at Pinecrest Cemetery, Plot 247, Section C, everyone gathered back at our house. That's when it started. I was in the kitchen making coffee. The automatic kind, nothing fancy, just something to keep my hands busy. Through the doorway, I could see Gregory and Vanessa in the living room with Charles's brother, Uncle Howard, and his wife Margaret. Our neighbors, the Kowalskis from next door, were there. The Chens from across the street. Dr. Patricia Mendoza, who'd been Charles's colleague for 23 years. At least 30 people total, maybe more. I heard Gregory's voice first, that specific tone he used when he was making announcements. The same voice he'd used to tell us he was engaged, that he was moving to Denver, that we were going to be grandparents. "Everyone, if I could have your attention for just a moment." The room quieted. I stood in the kitchen doorway, coffee pot in hand, and watched. "First, I want to thank you all for being here today. Dad would have been so moved by this turnout." Gregory's voice cracked perfectly, just enough emotion to seem genuine. "These past few weeks have been incredibly difficult for all of us, but especially for Mom." He gestured toward me. Everyone turned to look. I felt my face get hot. "Vanessa and I have been discussing the best way forward, and we want Mom to know that she's not alone in this. We're going to take care of everything." Vanessa stepped forward, putting her arm around Gregory's waist. She was beautiful. I'll give her that. 34 years old, personal trainer body, honey blonde hair that cost $400 every 6 weeks at that salon in Cherry Creek. She smiled at the room, the kind of smile that belonged in a toothpaste commercial. Eleanor has been so strong, Vanessa said, her voice dripping with concern. But the truth is she's 72 years old, and managing this big house all alone, handling finances, making decisions, it's too much. We found a wonderful assisted living community in Denver, close to us, where she'll have 24-hour care and won't have to worry about anything. The room was silent. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, watching for my reaction. Uncle Howard cleared his throat. Well, that's very thoughtful of you both. But shouldn't Eleanor be part of this conversation? Of course, Gregory said quickly. That's why we're doing this now, with family present. Mom, we've already put down a deposit at Meadowbrook Senior Living. It's $4,800 a month, all inclusive. We figured we could sell this house. It should get around $600,000 in the current market, and that money will cover your care for the foreseeable future. I stood there, still holding the coffee pot, and did the math. $600,000 divided by $4,800 a month was 125 months, just over 10 years, and I was 72. They were planning for me to die before 83. The house isn't paid off, I said quietly. Gregory waved his hand dismissively. The mortgage is only about $180,000, right? So after that and realtor fees, you'll still clear maybe $380,000. That's still plenty. He was wrong. The house had been paid off since 2003. But I didn't correct him. We're thinking you can move by the end of this week, Vanessa added. She pulled out that manila envelope from her black leather Hermes bag. I knew it was Hermes because the price tag, $8,700, had been left on for the first 6 months she owned it. I have all the paperwork right here. We just need your signature, and we can get everything in motion. Dr. Mendoza spoke up from the corner. This seems rather sudden. Eleanor, have you had time to think about what you want? Of course she wants to be near her grandchildren, Vanessa said before I could answer. What grandmother wouldn't? And honestly, at her age, living alone is dangerous. What if she falls? What if there's a medical emergency? I'm 72, not 92, I said. Mom, Gregory's voice took on that edge, the one that meant he was losing patience. Let's be realistic. You've never worked. You've never handled the finances. Dad took care of all of that. You don't even know what's in the bank accounts, do you? Actually, I knew exactly what was in every account. I reviewed the statements quarterly with Mr. Hampton, but Gregory was right about one thing. I'd never told him I knew. What about Dad's pension? Uncle Howard asked. His retirement accounts? There's a pension, but it's only about $2,100 a month, Gregory said. Barely enough to cover the assisted living, let alone everything else. And Dad's 401k is basically depleted. He took early withdrawals for some reason. He looked at me. Do you know anything about that, Mom? I did. Charles had moved $73,000 from his 401k into a trust 3 years ago when Gregory had started asking too many questions about the eventual inheritance. But again, I said nothing. Mrs. Chen stepped forward. Eleanor, dear, this is a big decision. You don't have to decide anything today. The deposit is non-refundable, Vanessa said sharply. We've already committed, and honestly, the sooner we get the house on the market, the better. Real estate slows down in winter. I looked around the room, at the people who'd been our friends for decades, at Uncle Howard, who looked uncomfortable but uncertain, at Gregory, my only child, who was looking at me like I was a problem to be solved rather than a person to be considered, at Vanessa, who wasn't even trying to hide the calculation in her eyes. And I thought about Charles, about the night he'd been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 8 months ago, about how we'd sat in this very living room and he'd said, Eleanor, promise me you'll be smart. Promise me you won't let them take advantage of you. I'd promised. I set down the coffee pot on the side table, walked over to Gregory and Vanessa, took the manila envelope from her hands. Everyone watched. Okay, I said. Vanessa's face lit up with triumph. Oh, Eleanor, you're making the right choice. We're going to take such good care of you. Friday, then, Gregory said. We'll arrange for movers on Thursday. Just pack your personal items. We'll handle selling the furniture with the house. Okay, I said again. I turned and walked upstairs to the bedroom I'd shared with Charles for 35 years. I could hear the murmuring start as soon as I was out of sight. Poor Eleanor. It's probably for the best. She seems confused. At least Gregory is being responsible. I closed the bedroom door behind me, sat on the edge of the bed, and opened the manila envelope. Inside were papers for Meadowbrook Senior Living, a shared room, not even a private one, at $4,800 a month. The photos showed a sterile space with floral wallpaper and a view of a parking lot. The activities calendar listed bingo, chair yoga, and craft time. There was also a power of attorney document granting Gregory full control over my finances, and a listing agreement for the house, already filled out with a realtor's name, Bryce Morrison, Summit Realty Group. They'd planned this before Charles was even in the ground. I sat there for a long time holding those papers, listening to the sounds of people leaving downstairs, car doors closing, engines starting, voices fading. Finally, when the house was quiet, I went to the closet. Behind my winter coats, in a box marked Christmas Decorations 1997, was a fireproof safe. The combination was Charles's birthday, April 17th, 1952. Inside were documents, not the ones Gregory knew about. The will, Charles's pension information, the life insurance policy for $50,000. Those were in the file cabinet in the study, easy to find, exactly what Gregory expected. These were different. Property deeds, stock certificates, trust documents, bank statements. I pulled out the one on top. It was from First Continental Bank, dated October 1st, 2024, 1 week before Charles died. Account holder, Eleanor M. Whitmore. Account type, investment portfolio. Current balance, $17,847,293.42. I read it twice, even though I'd seen these statements every quarter for years. Even though I knew every number, every investment, every single dollar. Charles and I had taken my father's $47.3 million inheritance and, over 23 years, turned it into something larger. We'd diversified, invested in commercial real estate, index funds, municipal bonds. We'd lived modestly and let compound interest do its work, and we'd told no one. Not Gregory, not Uncle Howard, not our closest friends. We'd wanted to see who loved us when they thought we had nothing. Now I knew. I put the statement back in the safe, locked it, and returned the box to its place behind the coats. Then I picked up my phone and made a call. Hampton and Associates, this is Jennifer speaking. Jennifer, this is Eleanor Whitmore. I need to see Mr. Hampton first thing tomorrow morning. Tell him it's urgent. Of course, Mrs. Whitmore, I'm so sorry for your loss. Would 9 a.m. work? 9 is perfect. I hung up and went downstairs. Gregory was in the study, going through Charles's desk. Vanessa was in the kitchen, photographing the appliances with her phone, probably for the real estate listing. Mom! Gregory looked up when I appeared in the doorway. We were just getting a head start on organizing Dad's papers. You should probably rest. We can handle this. That's kind of you, I said. But I think I'll take a walk. I need some air. Are you sure you should be alone? Vanessa called from the kitchen. I'm sure. I put on my coat, the brown wool one Charles had bought me for our 40th anniversary, $247 from Nordstrom, and walked out into the November evening. The air was cold and sharp. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I walked down Sycamore Lane, past the houses where we'd lived our entire married life, past the Kowalski's place, where I'd babysat their kids 30 years ago, past the Chen's house, where we'd had countless summer barbecues. I walked for 45 minutes until the sky was fully dark and my feet ached. And the whole time I was thinking, Charles had been right. I needed to be smart. But more than that, I needed to be strategic. Because this wasn't just about money. This was about my son looking at me like I was a burden. About my daughter-in-law measuring the value of my home before my husband was cold in his grave. About being dismissed, diminished, and discarded. They thought I was weak. They thought I was helpless. They thought I was theirs to manage. They were wrong on all 3 counts. When I got back to the house, the lights were on in the living room. Through the window, I could see Gregory and Vanessa sitting on the couch, looking at something on his laptop, probably browsing furniture stores for what they'd put in their house once I was safely tucked away in Denver. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, looking at the home I'd lived in for 35 years. The home where I'd raised my son. The home where my husband had died. The home that was entirely in my name. Paid off, worth not $600,000 but closer to $890,000 based on recent comparable sales in the neighborhood. Then I smiled. Not a big smile, just a small one. And I walked inside to start packing, not for Meadowbrook Senior Living, for war. Wednesday, November 3rd, 2024, I woke up at 5:47 a.m., the same time I'd woken up for 47 years. Charles's side of the bed was empty, the sheets still tucked in exactly as I'd left them the morning after he died. I didn't cry. I'd done my crying in private, late at night when Gregory and Vanessa were asleep in the guest room. This morning I had work to do. I made coffee, the expensive kind, the Lavazza beans from the Italian market that cost $18.99 a pound. Charles and I had always bought them, one small luxury we allowed ourselves. I poured a cup, added cream, and sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and a pen. At the top of the page, I wrote, "What I know." Then I started listing. Downstairs, I could hear movement. Gregory's alarm went off at 6 a.m. sharp. He'd always been an early riser, even as a child. I heard the shower start, heard Vanessa's voice muffled through the floors. I kept writing. At 7:15 a.m., they came downstairs. Gregory was dressed in one of his Denver business casual outfits, dark jeans, a button-down shirt, expensive sneakers. Vanessa wore Lululemon, the $128 leggings. I'd seen her Instagram posts about them. "Morning, Mom," Gregory said, kissing my cheek. "You're up early." Couldn't sleep. Vanessa poured herself coffee, saw the yellow legal pad, and her eyes flickered with something. Curiosity? Concern? Making lists? "Just organizing my thoughts," I said mildly. "At my age, you have to write things down or you forget them." It was a lie. My memory was perfect. But it was the kind of lie they wanted to hear, the kind that confirmed their image of me as a confused old woman who needed their help. "We're going to head out for a few hours," Gregory said. "Meeting with the realtor, and then we need to look at storage units for your furniture. Will you be okay here?" "Of course." "We'll be back around lunch. Don't answer the door for anyone, okay? You never know these days." I nodded obediently, watched them leave in their rented BMW X5, $89 per day from Enterprise. I'd seen the receipt on the counter. The moment their car pulled out of the driveway, I stood up. I had approximately 4 hours. I started in Charles's study. The study was exactly as Charles had left it. His books lined the walls, mostly academic texts on European history, his specialty. His desk was oak, solid, bought from an estate sale in 1991 for $300. The filing cabinet in the corner was unlocked. I knew Gregory had already been through the top drawer. I'd seen him yesterday, pulling out the obvious documents. The will, the life insurance policy, the pension paperwork. But Charles had taught me something important. People only look for what they expect to find. I started with the bottom drawer. Behind the tax returns from 2018 to 2023, there was a folder labeled University Correspondence. Inside were letters from Bridgemont University, routine stuff about faculty meetings and semester schedules. Except one letter, dated March 15, 2019. It was from the university's HR department, confirming Charles's retirement account rollover. Amount transferred, $312,847.63. Destination, Charles E. Whitmore Personal Trust, account number ending in 7734. I photographed it with my phone. Next, I found the bank statements Gregory had mentioned. Charles's checking account at Bridgemont Community Bank. The most recent one showed a balance of $4,287.12. Monthly deposits of $7,416.67 from his pension. Monthly withdrawals for utilities, groceries, the usual expenses. Perfectly ordinary. Perfectly designed to look like a retired professor living on a fixed income. But there was a second statement, paper-clipped behind the first one. A savings account at the same bank. Balance, $127,493.88. Gregory hadn't mentioned that account. I photographed both statements. In the back of the drawer, I found a key, small brass with a tag, Safety Deposit Box 447, First Continental Bank. I put it in my pocket. Charles's closet still smelled like him, Old Spice deodorant and the cedar blocks he kept to protect his sweaters. I stood there for a moment, letting myself feel it, missing him, Then I got to work. Behind the winter coats, I retrieved the fireproof safe. Inside were the documents I'd looked at yesterday, but I went through them again, this time methodically, photographing everything. First Continental Bank investment portfolio, $17,847,293.42. The detailed statement showed the breakdown. Vanguard Total Stock Market Index, $8,234,117. Vanguard Total Bond Market Index, $4,112,893. Municipal bonds, tax-free, $2,890,447. Real Estate Investment Trust, $2,609,836.42. All in my name, Eleanor M. Whitmore. Next, property deeds. 1,247 Sycamore Lane, Bridgemont. Paid in full, 2003. Current estimated value, $890,000. Owner, Eleanor M. Whitmore. But there were more. 873 Commerce Street, Bridgemont. Commercial property, 4-story office building. Purchased 2007 for $1.2 million. Current value approximately $2.8 million. Owner, Castellano Properties, LLC. Manager, Eleanor M. Whitmore. 1440 to 1448 Riverside Drive, Bridgemont. Strip Mall, 6 retail units. Purchased 2011 for $890,000. Current value approximately $1.7 million. Owner, Castellano Properties, LLC. Manager, Eleanor M. Whitmore. And more. 3 more commercial properties in total, all purchased through my father's original company, which I'd maintained and grown over the years. I photographed every deed, every assessment, every document. Then I found the trust documents. The Charles E. Whitmore Irrevocable Trust, established April 3, 2021. Beneficiary, Eleanor Marie Whitmore. Contingent beneficiary, Gregory James Whitmore, upon Eleanor's death. Assets, $4,237,000, various accounts and securities. Trustee, Gerald Hampton, Esquire. Hampton and Associates Special Provisions, Section 7, Paragraph 3. In the event the trustee determines, at his sole discretion, that the contingent beneficiary has attempted to coerce, manipulate, or otherwise improperly influence the beneficiary regarding her financial affairs, living arrangements, or legal decisions, the trustee is authorized to remove said contingent beneficiary and redistribute trust assets to charitable organizations as specified in Appendix C. I read that paragraph 3 times. Charles had known. Somehow he'd known this might happen. I photographed the entire trust document, all 47 pages. At the bottom of the safe, there was one more envelope, heavy paper, sealed, with my name written in Charles's handwriting. I opened it. Inside was a letter, dated September 30th, 2024, 8 days before he died. My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I suspect Gregory has shown his true colors. I've hoped for years that I was wrong about him, that the distance between us was just geography and busy lives. But I've seen the way he looks at things instead of people. I've heard the questions about our estate and what we're leaving behind. You've always seen the best in people, especially in our son. It's one of the things I love most about you. But sometimes love makes us blind. I've done what I can to protect you. The trust, the accounts, the properties, they're all structured to keep you safe and independent. Mr. Hampton knows everything, and he'll help you when the time comes. Don't let Gregory, or anyone, make you feel like you're a burden. You're not. You've never been. You're the strongest person I've ever known, even if you hide it behind cookies and cardigans. Be smart. Be strong. And remember, you don't owe anyone your security just because they share your blood. All my love, always. Charles, I sat on the bedroom floor, holding that letter, and finally let myself cry. Not for long, I didn't have time. But for 5 minutes, I let the tears come. Then I wiped my face, put the letter back in the safe, and checked my phone. 10:47 a.m. Gregory and Vanessa would be back in about an hour. I had one more place to check. The attic was dusty and hot, even in November. We'd stored things up here for decades, old furniture, Christmas decorations, boxes of Gregory's childhood belongings that he'd never come back for. I found what I was looking for in the back corner, 3 cardboard boxes labeled VC Estate 2001. My father's papers. I hadn't looked at them in years. I opened the first box. Inside were the original incorporation documents for Castellano Commercial Properties, established 1967, my father's business licenses, partnership agreements, and tax returns. I flipped through them, looking for the final year, 2001, the year he died. Castellano Commercial Properties, year end, 2001. Total assets, $47,382,919. Total properties, 43 commercial buildings. Total annual revenue, $6,847,293. I'd inherited all of it. Every building, every dollar, every contract. In the second box, I found my father's will. Simple, straightforward. Everything to his beloved daughter, Eleanor. The third box contained something I'd forgotten about. My father's ledgers. He'd been old school, keeping handwritten records even after everything was computerized. I flipped through the pages, seeing his neat, precise handwriting documenting every transaction, every property, every tenant. On the last page, there was a note, dated March 2001, a month before he died. Eleanor, remember what I taught you. Assets speak louder than words. Documentation is power. Never let anyone make you feel small because you're quiet. The quietest people in the room are often the ones who own it. Pop. I took photos of everything I needed, closed the boxes, and climbed back down the attic stairs. When Gregory and Vanessa returned at 12:30 p.m., I was in the kitchen making sandwiches. "Mom, you didn't have to do that," Gregory said, but he took a sandwich anyway. "How is the realtor?" I asked. "Great. Bryce thinks we can list for $625,000. Maybe get $600,000 after negotiations. He can start showings next week." "That's wonderful," I said. Vanessa pulled out her phone. "We also found a great storage unit. Climate-controlled, $247 a month. We can move your furniture there until we figure out what to do with it." "Very thoughtful," I said. They exchanged a glance. They'd expected resistance, questions, emotion. My compliance made them suspicious. "Are you feeling okay, Mom?" Gregory asked. "Just tired," I said. "It's been a long few days." "We'll get some rest this afternoon. Tomorrow's Thursday, moving day. The movers will be here at 8 a.m. I nodded and went upstairs. In my bedroom, I pulled out my phone and reviewed the photos I'd taken. 63 images in total. Bank statements, property deeds, trust documents, my father's will, tax returns, evidence. Then I called Mr. Hampton's office again. "Jennifer, it's Eleanor Whitmore. I need to move tomorrow's appointment to this afternoon. Is Mr. Hampton available at 2 p.m.? "Let me check. Yes, he can do 2 p.m. Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine. I just need to expedite some matters." At 1:30 p.m., I told Gregory and Vanessa I was going to the pharmacy to pick up a prescription. "Do you want us to drive you?" Vanessa asked. "No, thank you. The walk will do me good." I took the car, the 2018 Honda Accord, paid off, 47,000 miles, and drove to downtown Bridgemont. Gerald Hampton had been our attorney for 32 years. He was 71 now, silver-haired, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He'd drafted my father's will. He'd handled Charles's estate planning. He knew everything. His office was on the 3rd floor of a brick building on 5th Street. Oak furniture, law books lining the walls, photos of his grandchildren on the desk. He stood when I entered. "Eleanor, I'm so very sorry about Charles." "Thank you, Gerald." We sat. He folded his hands on the desk and waited. "Gregory wants to put me in assisted living," I said. "He plans to sell the house, take control of my finances, and move me to Denver by Friday." Gerald's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. "Does he now?" "He doesn't know about the portfolio. He doesn't know about the properties. He thinks Charles left me with a pension and a mortgaged house. And you haven't corrected this misunderstanding." "No." "Good." Gerald opened a drawer and pulled out a file, thick, legal-sized, with my name on the tab. "Charles and I updated everything 6 months ago. He was quite insistent about certain protections." He opened the file and began pulling out documents. "First, your investment portfolio at First Continental. Current value as of November 1st, $17,847,293.42. All in your name, all legally yours. Charles never had access to it. It was always your inheritance, managed jointly but owned solely by you. He slid a statement across the desk. I already had photos of it, but I nodded. Second, the Castellano Properties, LLC. You currently own 5 commercial properties in Bridgemont with a combined assessed value of $8.9 million. Annual rental income, approximately $624,000 before expenses, approximately $421,000 net. Another document. I took it. Third, the house on Sycamore Lane, owned outright in your name only. Charles signed a quitclaim deed in 2003 transferring his share to you. Gregory has no legal claim to it whatsoever. He doesn't know that. Clearly. Gerald's tone was dry. Fourth, Charles's trust. Assets of $4.2 million. Beneficiary, you. Contingent beneficiary, Gregory, but only if certain conditions are met. Which brings me to Section 7, Paragraph 3. He pulled out the trust document, the same one I'd photographed that morning. If I determine as trustee that Gregory has attempted to coerce or manipulate you regarding your finances or living situation, I have the authority to remove him as contingent beneficiary. The assets would then go to the charities Charles specified, the Bridgemont Public Library, the university's history department, and the Pancreatic Cancer Research Foundation. Can you make that determination? I asked. Has he attempted to coerce you? He's trying to force me into assisted living, sell my house without my consent, and take control of my finances using a power of attorney I haven't signed. Then yes, Gerald said, I can absolutely make that determination. In fact, I already have. He pulled out a legal form, already filled out, dated today. As of 2 p.m., today, Gregory James Whitmore is removed as contingent beneficiary of the Charles E. Whitmore Irrevocable Trust. He has no claim to those assets. What about the life insurance? I asked. The $50,000 policy through the university? That names Gregory as beneficiary. Charles wanted him to have something. He wasn't cruel, just careful. But nothing else. Nothing else. And Eleanor, you need to understand something important. Your total assets, including the portfolio, the properties, the house, and the trust, come to approximately $31.7 million. You're a very wealthy woman. You could live comfortably for the rest of your life, travel the world, do anything you want. You certainly don't need to be warehoused in a $4,800 a month facility so your son can sell your house. I sat back in the chair. Hearing it out loud, $31.7 million made it real in a way the documents hadn't. What do you recommend? I asked. Gerald leaned forward. What do you want, Eleanor? That's the question. Do you want to reconcile with Gregory? Do you want to fight him? Do you want to simply walk away? I thought about it. About Gregory going through Charles's desk. About Vanessa photographing my kitchen appliances. About the manila envelope with the assisted living paperwork and the power of attorney. About standing in my own living room while my son announced plans for my life without once asking what I wanted. I want him to understand what he's done, I said quietly. I want him to know that I'm not helpless, not confused, not a problem to be managed. I want him to see me. Gerald nodded slowly. Then we'll need to be strategic. We can't just tell him, he won't believe it, or he'll try to fight it. We need to show him, in a way he can't deny or explain away. How? He pulled out a fresh legal pad and clicked his pen. Let me tell you what I'm thinking. We talked for 90 minutes. By the time I left his office at 3:30 p.m., I had a plan. Thursday, November 4th, the movers arrived at exactly 8 a.m., 2 young men in blue uniforms from Bridgemont Moving and Storage, driving a 26-foot truck. Gregory met them at the door. We're moving items to storage. I have a list. I stood in the kitchen, drinking coffee, watching. They started with the furniture from the guest room, the bed Gregory and Vanessa had been sleeping in, the dresser, the nightstands. Then they moved to the living room, the couch, the armchairs, the coffee table. Mom, do you want to keep anything in particular? Gregory asked. We're trying to stage the house for selling, so it needs to look minimal, but if there's a piece that's sentimental. The kitchen table, I said, and my bedroom furniture. Everything else can go. He looked relieved. Great, that's perfect. By noon, the truck was loaded. Gregory signed the paperwork, tipped the movers $40 each, and they drove away. The house looked empty, echoey, sad. Well, Vanessa said, looking around, This will definitely show better. Bryce is bringing photographers tomorrow. Wonderful, I said. That afternoon, while Gregory and Vanessa went to lunch, I went to First Continental Bank. The bank was downtown, a tall granite building that had been there since 1952. I walked up to the customer service desk. I need to access my safety deposit box, I said. Box 447. The woman checked my ID, verified my signature, and led me to the vault. Inside box 447 were more documents. Stock certificates from my father's original investments, some dating back to the 1970s. Jewelry, my mother's engagement ring, my grandmother's pearls. And one more envelope, this one sealed with red wax. I opened it. Inside were photographs, old ones from before Gregory was born. Pictures of me and my father at construction sites, me in a hard hat and work boots, looking at blueprints. Me at ribbon-cutting ceremonies for new buildings. Me in business suits, shaking hands with contractors and city officials. I'd forgotten about these. Or maybe I just stopped seeing myself as that person. The girl in the photos looked confident, capable, strong. I took the envelope with me and left the bank. Gregory's flight back to Denver was at 2 p.m. He and Vanessa were in the living room, suitcases packed, making final arrangements on their phones. The photographers are coming at 10, Gregory said. Bryce thinks we can have the listing live by Monday. Showings start Wednesday. And you're all set with the assisted living? Vanessa asked me. We have you on the calendar for move-in next Friday, November 12th. All set, I said. Gregory hugged me at the door. We'll call you every day, okay? And we'll be back in 2 weeks to help with the transition. Thank you, sweetheart. Vanessa hugged me, too. You're doing the right thing, Eleanor. This is what's best for everyone. I waved as they drove away in their rented BMW. Then I went inside, locked the door, and called Gerald Hampton. It's time, I said. I'll make the arrangements. Tuesday, November 9th, 10 a.m., my office. Gregory will receive a certified letter on Monday requesting his presence for matters regarding the estate of Charles E. Whitmore. He'll think it's routine. And you'll have everything ready? Everything. Eleanor, are you sure about this? I looked around my empty house, at the spaces where furniture used to be, at the kitchen where I'd made thousands of meals for a son who was now trying to warehouse me in Denver. I'm sure, I said. I spent the weekend organizing, printing documents, arranging them in chronological order, creating a presentation that would be impossible to deny. On Sunday afternoon, I drove to the cemetery, stood at Charles's grave. The headstone wouldn't be installed for another month, so it was just a mound of earth with a temporary marker. I'm doing it, I told him. What you asked me to do. I'm being smart, and I'm being strong. The November wind rustled through the trees. A few leaves, brown and brittle, skittered across the ground. I wish you were here, I whispered. But I can do this. You taught me how. On Monday, November 8th, Gregory called. Mom, I got a weird letter from Mr. Hampton. He wants me to come to his office tomorrow for estate matters. Did you know about this? He mentioned he needed to go over some paperwork, I said vaguely. Probably just formalities. Can you come too? Of course. Okay, I'll fly in tomorrow morning. This better be quick. I have meetings Wednesday. He had no idea. None at all. Hampton and Associates, 9:45 a.m. I arrived 15 minutes early. I'd dressed carefully that morning. Not in my usual cardigans and comfortable pants, but in a navy blue suit I'd kept in the back of my closet. It was from 2001, from my father's funeral, but it still fit. I'd paired it with pearl earrings and low heels. When I looked in the mirror, I saw someone I barely recognized. Not Eleanor the homemaker, Eleanor the heiress. Jennifer, Mr. Hampton's assistant, smiled when I walked in. Mrs. Whitmore, you look lovely. Can I get you coffee? Please, black, no sugar. I sat in the waiting area, hands folded in my lap, and waited. At 9:52 a.m., Gregory arrived. He was wearing his Denver business casual again, looking rushed and irritated. He'd taken the 6 a.m. flight from Denver, landed at 8:30, and probably drove straight here. Mom, he kissed my cheek. You could have told me you were dressing up. I would have worn a suit. You look fine, dear. At exactly 10 a.m., Gerald Hampton's door opened. Eleanor, Gregory, please come in. His office looked the same as always. Oak furniture, law books, family photos. But today, his large conference table was covered with documents, arranged in neat stacks, each one labeled with a colored tab. Gregory saw them and frowned. "That's a lot of paperwork for a formality. Please, sit." Gerald gestured to the chairs on one side of the table. He took the seat across from us, positioning himself like an attorney at a deposition, which I suppose he was. "Thank you both for coming," Gerald began. "We're here to discuss the estate of Charles Edward Whitmore, deceased October 8, 2024, and related financial matters concerning Eleanor Marie Whitmore." Gregory shifted in his chair. "Is this about the life insurance? I thought that was straightforward." "We'll get to that," Gerald said. "But first, I need to clarify some information. Gregory, you've made several statements over the past week regarding your parents' financial situation. I'd like to confirm what you believe to be true." Gregory glanced at me, then back at Gerald. "Okay. You stated that your father left behind a pension of approximately $2,100 per month, correct?" "That's what Mom told me. Well, what I assumed based on his university salary." Gerald made a note. "You also stated that the house at 1247 Sycamore Lane has a mortgage of approximately $180,000? "Right. That's standard for a house that age. And you believe the house is worth approximately $600,000? "That's what Bryce, the realtor, estimated." "And you believe that your mother, Eleanor, has never worked and has no assets of her own?" Gregory looked uncomfortable now. "Well, she didn't work outside the home. She was a housewife. There's nothing wrong with that, but it means Dad was the breadwinner. His pension and whatever savings they had, that's what Mom has to live on now." "I see." Gerald pulled the first stack of documents toward him. "Let's address these assumptions one by one." He opened the top folder. "First, the pension. Your father's pension from Bridgemont University was indeed $7,416.67 per month, not $2,100. That's $89,000 annually." Gregory blinked. "I what? Why did you tell me $2,100, Mom?" I didn't answer. Gerald continued. "Second, the house. 1247 Sycamore Lane was paid off in full in 2003. There is no mortgage. The property is worth approximately $890,000 based on current market comparables, and it is owned entirely by Eleanor Marie Whitmore. Your father signed a quitclaim deed transferring his share to her 21 years ago." He slid a document across the table. The deed, with Charles's signature, dated August 15, 2003. Gregory picked it up, his hands starting to shake slightly. Why wouldn't you tell me this?" "Third," Gerald continued, his voice steady and professional, "your mother's employment history. While it's true Eleanor hasn't held traditional employment during her marriage, she is, and has been since 2001, the sole owner and manager of Castellano Commercial Properties, LLC." He pulled out the next stack. "Property deeds, all bearing my name. Castellano Properties currently owns 5 commercial buildings in Bridgemont with a combined assessed value of $8.9 million. These properties generate approximately $421,000 in annual net rental income." Gregory's face had gone pale. "What are you talking about? What properties?" Gerald read from the list. 873 Commerce Street, a 4-story office building valued at $2.8 million. 1440 to 1448 Riverside Drive, a strip mall valued at $1.7 million. 2247 Industrial Parkway, a warehouse facility valued at $1.9 million. 556 Maple Avenue, a mixed-use building valued at $1.6 million. And 1893 Harbor Road, a waterfront commercial property valued at $2.9 million. With each address, he slid a deed across the table, each one clearly showing, "Owner, Eleanor M. Whitmore." "That's impossible," Gregory whispered. "Where would she get that kind of money?" "From her father, Vincent Castellano, who died in 2001 and left his entire commercial real estate empire to his only daughter. At the time of his death, the portfolio was valued at $47.3 million. Gerald produced my father's will. I watched Gregory's face as he read it, watched the realization dawn. "You inherited $47 million? He turned to me. "And you never told me?" "Your mother and father made a decision 23 years ago," Gerald said. "They chose to live modestly on Charles's salary and invest Eleanor's inheritance. Which brings me to the fourth point. He pulled out the largest stack yet. Bank statements from First Continental. Eleanor's current investment portfolio, held at First Continental Bank, has a present value of $17,847,293.42. Breakdown as follows. Vanguard Total Stock Market Index, $8.2 million. Vanguard Total Bond Market Index, $4.1 million. Municipal bonds, $2.9 million. Real Estate Investment Trust, $2.6 million. Gregory's mouth was open. He looked like a man who'd just been hit by a truck. Additionally, Gerald continued, there is Charles's personal trust, established in 2021, with assets of $4.2 million. The trust was designed to provide additional security for Eleanor, with you named as contingent beneficiary upon her death. Was? Gregory's voice cracked. Was, Gerald confirmed. As trustee, I invoked Section 7, Paragraph 3 on November 4th, 2024. He read from the document. In the event the trustee determines that the contingent beneficiary has attempted to coerce, manipulate, or otherwise improperly influence the beneficiary regarding her financial affairs, living arrangements, or legal decisions, the trustee is authorized to remove said contingent beneficiary. You've been removed as beneficiary, Gregory. The trust assets will now go to charity upon Eleanor's death. Gregory stood up so fast his chair fell backward. This is insane. I didn't coerce anyone. I was trying to help her. Were you? Gerald's voice was ice. Let's review what you've done in the past week. He pulled out another document. On November 2nd, at your father's funeral reception, you announced, in front of approximately 30 witnesses, that you had put a deposit down on an assisted living facility for your mother, without her prior knowledge or consent. She agreed. After you'd already made the financial commitment, Gerald said. You then stated publicly that you planned to sell her house, again without discussing it with her first. You arranged for movers to remove her furniture. You contacted a realtor and scheduled photographers. You prepared power of attorney documents. He slid the manila envelope across the table, the one Vanessa had given me. All of this before your father had been in the ground for 24 hours. I was helping her. Gregory's voice was rising. She's 72 years old. She's alone. She can't manage a house by herself. Your mother, Gerald said quietly, manages a commercial real estate portfolio worth $8.9 million. I think she can handle a single-family home. Gregory turned to me. His face was red, eyes wild. Why didn't you tell me? Any of this? We're supposed to be family. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I spoke for the first time since entering the office. You stood in my living room, I said softly, in front of my friends and neighbors, and you said I'd never worked. You said I didn't know what was in the bank accounts. You said I couldn't manage my own life. You didn't ask me what I wanted. You told me what you'd decided for me. Because I thought you needed help. Did you? I pulled out my phone and brought up the photos I'd taken. Or did you see an opportunity? I showed him the first photo. This is a text message Vanessa sent to her sister on November 3rd. I saw it when she left her phone on the kitchen counter. The message read, OMG, the house is going to get us at least $600,000. After the mortgage, Greg thinks it's like $380,000. We can finally renovate our kitchen. Gregory's face went white. She was just excited about. This, I said, swiping to the next photo, is a screenshot from her Instagram, posted November 4th. It was a photo of my kitchen appliances with the caption, Anyone know good staging companies in CO? About to inherit some furniture that needs to go. #estate sale, #house flip. She was already planning to sell my things before I'd even agreed to move. I swiped again. And this is your search history from the computer in the study. I saw it when I was looking for a recipe. The searches, time-stamped November 2nd at 11:47 p.m. How to get power of attorney for elderly parent. Can you sell a house without owner present? Elderly parent refusing nursing home. Legal rights to parent's estate. Gregory sank back into his chair. He looked like he might be sick. You started planning this before Dad died, didn't you? I asked quietly. He'd been sick for 8 months. You had time to think, time to calculate. Mom, You know what the saddest part is? I continued. If you'd just asked me, if you'd sat down and had an honest conversation, I would have helped you. Your father and I talked about it. We were planning to give you money for the kids' college funds. We were going to set up trusts for Sophia and Michael, $100,000 each. Gregory's head snapped up. What? But you didn't want to wait, I said. You didn't want to ask. You wanted to take. Gerald cleared his throat. Which brings us to the final matter. Eleanor, would you like to tell him, or should I? I took a breath. The life insurance policy through the university, $50,000, that's yours. Your father wanted you to have something. He wasn't cruel. But everything else, Gerald said, the house, the properties, the portfolio, the trust, none of it is yours. None of it will ever be yours. Eleanor is 72 years old and in excellent health. Statistically, she could live another 20 years. And even when she passes, her will, which I've updated as of yesterday, leaves her estate to the following. He read from a document. Sophia Whitmore and Michael Whitmore, $500,000 each, to be held in trust until age 25. Bridgemont Public Library, $2 million. Bridgemont University History Department, $2 million. Pancreatic Cancer Research Foundation, $5 million. The remainder to be distributed among various charities. You get nothing? Gregory's voice was barely a whisper. You get the $50,000 life insurance, I said. And you get to know that your children will be taken care of. But you get nothing more from me. Not my house, not my money, not my time. Mom, please, I'm not finished. My voice was stronger now. You have 72 hours to remove your belongings from the storage unit. After that, I'm donating everything to Goodwill. The realtor agreement you signed is void. Bryce Morrison has already been notified. The assisted living facility has been informed that I will not be moving in. And no, you're not getting your deposit back. You lied on the application, claiming you had financial power of attorney. Gerald added, if you attempt to contest Eleanor's will or make any further attempts to manipulate or coerce her, I will pursue legal action for elder abuse and attempted financial exploitation. Do you understand? Gregory looked between us, his face a mask of shock and desperation. This is because of Vanessa, isn't it? Those texts, that Instagram post, I didn't know about those. I'll talk to her. We can fix this. This isn't about Vanessa, I said. This is about you. This is about my son looking at me and seeing a problem instead of a person. This is about you making decisions for me instead of with me. This is about you thinking I was too old, too stupid, too helpless to deserve a say in my own life. I never thought that. Then why didn't you ask me what I wanted? I stood up, gathering my purse. I would have told you. I would have said I wanted to stay in my home, the home I shared with your father for 35 years. I would have said I wanted to be close to my friends, my community, the cemetery where Charles is buried. I would have said I didn't need you to save me. I needed you to see me. I walked to the door, then turned back. You have my number. When you're ready to have an actual relationship with me, one based on respect instead of assumptions, you can call me. Until then, I think we both need space. Mom, wait, but I was already walking out. Gerald's voice followed me into the hallway. Mr. Whitmore, I'll need you to sign some documents acknowledging your removal from the trust and confirming you understand the legal boundaries going forward. I didn't hear the rest. I walked out of the building into the cold November morning, and I breathed. For the first time in a week, I could breathe. 6 months later, I woke to sunlight streaming through the bedroom window and the sound of birds in the oak tree outside. The same oak tree that had been there when Charles and I moved in, now thick and full of spring leaves. I made coffee, the good kind, the Lavazza beans, and carried it out to the back porch. The garden was blooming. I'd spent March and April working in it, planting perennials that would come back year after year. Peonies, irises, black-eyed Susans. Charles would have loved it. At 8 a.m., my phone rang. I smiled when I saw the name. Hi, sweetheart. Hi, Grandma. Sophia's voice was bright, excited. Are you still coming to my dance recital on Saturday? Wouldn't miss it. Dad says I should remind you it starts at 2 o'clock, not 2:30. I'll be there at 1:45, I promised. After the confrontation in November, Gregory had called exactly once. It was 3 weeks later, late at night, and he'd been crying. I'm sorry, he'd said. I'm so sorry, Mom. You're right, about all of it. I'd listened while he talked, about the pressure he felt to provide for his family, About Vanessa's spending habits and their debt. $87,000 in credit cards, it turned out. About feeling like he'd failed and seeing my supposed inheritance as a solution. I should have just talked to you, he'd said. I should have asked for help instead of trying to take it. Yes, I'd said. You should have. Can we start over? We can try. It had been slow. Phone calls first, careful and awkward, then video chats with the kids. In January, I'd flown to Denver for Michael's birthday. In March, they'd come to Bridgemont for a weekend. We didn't talk about the money. We didn't talk about November. We just talked. About the kids' school, about Gregory's work, about the garden I was planning. Vanessa and I were cordial but distant. She'd apologized, stiffly, clearly prompted by Gregory. I'd accepted, but I hadn't forgotten. Trust, once broken, takes years to rebuild. But Sophia and Michael, they were innocent in all this, and I wouldn't punish them for their parents' mistakes. The college trusts were still in place, $100,000 each, waiting for them. At 10 a.m., I had coffee with Patricia Mendoza, Charles's old colleague from the university. We met once a week now, alternating between her place and mine, talking about books and politics and life. How's the foundation coming? She asked. We're finalizing the paperwork. It should be officially established by July. The Charles E. Whitmore Memorial Foundation for Pancreatic Cancer Research. I'd seeded it with $3 million, and it would fund research grants for young scientists working on early detection and treatment. Charles would have been proud. At 2 p.m., I had a meeting with the management company that handled my properties. One of the tenants at the Riverside Drive strip mall wanted to expand into a second unit. We discussed terms, rent increases, renovation costs. I'd always been involved in managing the properties, but at a distance, through property managers and accountants. Now I was taking a more active role, meeting with tenants, touring the buildings, making decisions. It felt good. It felt like waking up after a very long sleep. At 6 p.m., I made dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta with vegetables from the farmer's market, and ate it on the back porch, watching the sun set behind the oak tree. My phone buzzed. A text from Gerald Hampton. Board meeting Thursday at 3. Foundation paperwork ready for your signature. I replied, I'll be there. Another text, this one from Joyce, a woman I'd met at the library's book club in February. Wine night Friday? My place? Sounds perfect, I sent back. I sat there for a long time, listening to the evening sounds. Kids playing in a yard down the street, a dog barking, the wind rustling through the leaves. I thought about Charles, about the letter he'd left me, telling me to be strong, to be smart. I thought about my father, teaching me that assets speak louder than words, that documentation is power. I thought about the girl in those old photographs, the one in the hard hat at construction sites, the one who'd known her own worth before she'd learned to hide it. And I thought about Gregory, sitting in Gerald's office 6 months ago, realizing that his mother wasn't who he'd thought she was. I'd learned something important that day. I'd learned that at 72 years old, you can still surprise people. You can still stand up. You can still choose yourself. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you will see you as a burden instead of a blessing. Sometimes they'll mistake your kindness for weakness. Sometimes they'll assume that quiet means powerless. But the greatest victory isn't proving them wrong with anger or cruelty. The greatest victory is proving them wrong by living well. 1 year later, it was the anniversary of Charles's death, and I drove to the cemetery in the morning. The headstone was beautiful, gray granite, simple, with his name and dates and the inscription I'd chosen. Beloved husband, teacher, protector. I brought flowers. The expensive kind, not the grocery store bouquet. Orchids, his favorite. We did it, I told him, sitting on the bench beside his grave. The foundation is funding 3 research projects. The library wing is being built. They're naming it after you. And Gregory? He's trying. Really trying. The wind stirred the leaves overhead. I miss you every single day, I whispered. But I'm okay. Better than okay. I'm living, Charles. Not just surviving. Living. That afternoon, I hosted Thanksgiving early. Gregory and his family were flying in, along with Uncle Howard and Margaret, the Kowalskis, the Chens, Patricia, Joyce, and a dozen others. 23 people around my table, in my home, eating food I'd made. Before dinner, I stood at the head of the table and raised my glass. "A year ago," I said, "I lost my husband and almost lost myself. But I learned something important. I learned that you're never too old to start over. You're never too old to stand up for yourself. And you're never too old to choose the life you want instead of the life others expect from you." I looked at Gregory. He met my eyes and nodded, understanding. "To second chances," I said. "To family, the one we're born into and the one we choose. And to Charles, who taught me that the quietest people in the room are often the ones who own it." "To Charles," everyone echoed. We ate, we laughed, we told stories, and when everyone had gone home and I was cleaning up the kitchen, I found a note on the counter. Gregory's handwriting. "Thank you for giving me a second chance. I love you, Mom. I'm sorry it took me so long to see you." I folded the note carefully and put it in my pocket. Then I poured myself a glass of wine, went out to the back porch, and watched the stars come out over my garden, my home, my life. A life I'd chosen. A life I'd fought for. A life that was finally, completely mine.